The coffee was still hot when my marriage ended. That's the detail I keep coming back to. Not the way she leaned into him, not the sound of her voice saying things I wasn't supposed to hear. The coffee. A large, dark roast from the Hudson News kiosk near Terminal B, $4.89, burning the inside of my palm through the paper cup. I remember thinking I should switch it to my other hand. I didn't move. Diana was 40 feet away. Her hand was inside Derek Holt's jacket pocket, and she was glowing, that's the word, lit from somewhere inside in a way that I had not seen in at least 2 years, and had quietly, privately been mourning without ever quite admitting to myself that it was gone. I used to know how to make her look like that. I had spent 9 years believing I still did. The coffee burned my palm. I stepped behind a column near the charging stations and stood completely still and did not make a sound. My name is James Calloway. I'm 38 years old. I went to Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport on a Tuesday morning in October to say goodbye to my best friend before a 6-month work posting overseas. That was the whole plan. It's remarkable looking back how completely a plan can dissolve in the space of 40 feet and one overheard sentence. Let me back up. I'd been married to Diana Walsh Calloway for 9 years. We met through mutual friends at a work event. She was in financial consulting. I was running a mid-sized construction management company, and we had approximately nothing in common, except that we made each other laugh and we both ordered the same obscure bourbon at the open bar, and somehow those two things turned out to be enough. For a while, they were more than enough. Diana is brilliant. The kind of financially precise, strategically minded person who can read a balance sheet the way most people read a headline, fast and completely. It was one of the things I admired most about her. She understood money at a structural level, the way it moved and what it meant and where the leverage was. I understood buildings and logistics and the physical reality of making something that didn't exist. We used to joke that together we made one complete adult. The early years were good, real. I want to be clear about that because it matters to what comes later. I wasn't in a bad marriage that I'd been pretending was fine. I was in a good marriage that had been quietly, gradually shifting for about 2 years in ways I kept misreading as normal drift. She worked more. I worked more. We had dinner together 3 or 4 nights a week instead of 6 or 7, and I told myself that was just how it went. She started her phone face down at the table, and I told myself she was trying to be present. She stopped asking about my projects with the particular interest she used to bring to those conversations. The one where she'd actually pull up the financials and ask questions that made me feel obscurely like she gave a damn, and I told myself people's interests shifted. The name started appearing about 14 months ago. Derek from accounting. Derek's team. Derek thinks the quarterly projections need a second look. Derek recommended this restaurant. Derek. Spoken with the casual frequency of someone who has made a decision, somewhere below conscious thought, to normalize a name. I heard it. I registered it. I told myself it was nothing. My brother Owen, financial attorney, methodical to the point where Diana used to call him uptight too by the book, told me once, early in my marriage, that the most dangerous financial mistakes aren't the ones you make in a panic. They're the ones you make because the situation has been normalized. I thought he was talking about money. The folder on her laptop was called Transition Plan. I found it 3 weeks before the airport, and I need to tell you the exact circumstances because they matter. Diana's laptop was on the kitchen counter. She'd left it open when she went upstairs to take a call. Unusual, she was normally very deliberate about closing it, and I walked past to get a glass of water and the screen was there. I didn't snoop. I don't want to rewrite it into something noble. I glanced. The folder was open on the desktop, labeled clearly, and something in my chest seized when I read it the way your chest seizes when you see something and understand before you consciously understand. I stood at the counter for a moment, then I walked upstairs, told Diana I was going to run to the hardware store, and called Owen from the driveway. I need you to walk me through something, I said. Owen was quiet while I described what I'd seen. Not the contents, just the name, the context, the folder, the way it had been sitting there. Have you opened it? He asked. Not yet. Don't. Not from her laptop. He paused. Is she home? Upstairs. Go back inside. Act normal. I need you to listen to me very carefully about what to do next and what not to do. That was the first professional I brought in. My brother Owen Calloway, financial attorney, 8 years of practice, specializing in asset protection and financial litigation. Diana had spent 9 years treating him like a minor inconvenience. She was about to understand what he was actually for. I went back inside. I acted normal. I made dinner. I watched a show with Diana that I couldn't tell you the name of if my life depended on it, because every atom of my attention was directed at keeping my face doing the right things while my mind was somewhere else entirely. She kissed me on the cheek before bed. You seem quiet, she said. Long day, I said. She accepted that. She would, I realized, continue accepting that because it was useful for her that I seemed like someone who noticed nothing. I had been useful to her in this way for quite some time. I waited until she was asleep. Then I went downstairs, opened my own laptop, and accessed our joint accounts from my login. I looked for about 20 minutes. Then I called Owen at 11:47 p.m. and said, "There are transfers I don't recognize." "How much?" he said. He was fully awake. I think he'd been waiting for the call. 18,000, distributed across 3 months. Small enough to miss if you're not looking. I paused. I almost didn't look. Where are they going? A business account. The name isn't familiar. Owen was quiet. Send me the statements. Don't do anything else tonight. I sent the statements. Then I sat in the dark of my own kitchen in a house I had built a back deck on with my own hands. The kind of project you do because you want to make something yours. Really yours. The physical proof of investment. And I did the thing I would do every night for the next 3 weeks. I waited. Owen referred me to a forensic accountant named Patricia Gaines, CPA, Certified Fraud Examiner, 14 years in financial investigation, including 5 years with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit before she went private. She had a voice on the phone that was completely without judgment, which was the most useful quality anyone could have had in those weeks because I was walking around in a state of sustained unreality that judgment would have collapsed. She spent a week with the statements Owen sent her. Her preliminary report identified a pattern, not random transfers, a structured systematic drawdown, methodical, designed to stay below the threshold that triggers automatic bank notifications. $4,900 here, $3,800 there, sometimes twice a month, sometimes once, always to the same destination account. The destination account, Patricia told me on the phone, is registered to an LLC formed 7 months ago. The registered agent is a name I'd like to run through additional channels before I give it to you. She paused. But the formation date is consistent with the transfer timeline, 7 months ago. I thought about 7 months ago. What was different then? What had changed? Derek Holt, I said. She was quiet for a moment. I'll follow that. She came back to me 48 hours later with a document she emailed through Owen's secure server. Exhibit A, she labeled it. The LLC's registered agent was listed as a corporate services company, a shield, the kind you use when you don't want a name on the document. But the entity address for tax purposes was a condo in Buckhead registered to a Derek A. Holt. I read that email in my car in my own driveway at 7:14 a.m. while Diana was inside making coffee. My hands were on the steering wheel. I looked at them. They were not shaking. That surprised me. I had expected shaking. Instead, there was something colder than shaking. A low, spreading stillness, like the temperature had dropped inside me by several degrees and everything had simply slowed down. I walked inside. I kissed Diana on the cheek. I drank the coffee she handed me. I said something about a project timeline. She said something about a quarterly review. We were two people performing a marriage so polished that neither of us looked at the other's eyes directly for the entire conversation. I drove to Owen's office. We sat across from each other and I told him what Patricia had found, and he listened with the steady attention of someone who is very good at receiving information he was already partially expecting. Okay, he said when I finished. Here's what we do next. Owen spent the next 2 weeks filing documents I had never heard of and building what he called a protective architecture around our joint assets. A phrase that would have been abstract to me 2 months earlier and was now the most concrete thing in my life. Emergency asset protection filings, account flags that would trigger automatic notifications if any transfer above a certain threshold was attempted. A formal record with our bank's fraud division, established quietly, establishing our awareness of the pattern before any further movement occurred. He also referred me to a third professional, a family law attorney named Sandra Beck, 16 years of practice, known specifically for high-asset divorce cases involving financial misconduct. Owen said her name the way you say the name of someone you hope the other party never has to meet. Sandra was direct in a way that required adjustment. Your wife is moving money, she said, reviewing Patricia's report at our first meeting. She's doing it carefully, but she's doing it. The LLC is the mechanism. The timeline suggests she started planning this approximately 7 to 8 months ago. Before she started, I said. Before she started what? I looked at the table. Before she seemed happy again. Sandra was quiet for a moment. Not uncomfortable. She'd heard worse, I was sure. Just letting that land. The recording, she said. You mentioned something about a recording. That's tomorrow, I said. I want to tell you about the morning of the airport. My friend Marcus Webb had been my closest friend since college. Construction engineer, posted to a project in Dubai, leaving on a Tuesday on a 10:40 a.m. flight out of Hartsfield-Jackson. We'd planned to meet at the airport at 8 a.m. Hey, get coffee. Say goodbye the way men say goodbye, which is mostly bad jokes and a handshake that lasts slightly longer than a normal handshake. I parked the car. I texted Marcus that I was inside. I got in line at the Hudson News kiosk and ordered a large dark roast and turned around. And there she was, 40 feet away, near the departure gates. Diana, her rolling carry-on beside her, the gray one I'd bought her 2 birthdays ago. Her hand inside Derek Holt's jacket pocket, not holding his hand, not the formal gesture of two people acknowledging each other, but the casual, proprietary ease of someone who had been doing this for long enough that it no longer required thought. He was laughing at something she said. She was looking up at him, glowing. I stepped behind the column before I consciously made the decision to do it. The coffee was hot. I held it with both hands to give them something to do. My phone was in my jacket pocket. Something made me wait. Not a plan. I hadn't planned this specific situation, hadn't known she'd be here, hadn't orchestrated this particular moment, just instinct. The accumulated instinct of 3 weeks of learning to be very, very still. Her voice carried to me in the way voices carry in airport terminals. The specific acoustic quality of large open spaces, sound traveling farther than it should. He has no idea. I lifted my phone, kept it low at my side, angled toward them, hit record. Derek said something I didn't fully catch. How much time? Something about how much time. 3 weeks, maybe 4. Her voice was relaxed, confident. The register she used when she was comfortable. By the time he figures it out, the accounts will already be restructured. And the house? Diana laughed, quietly, easily, the way you laugh at something that's already decided, already in motion. My chest did something that I don't have a better word for than concrete, like everything in it simply solidified. He's about to lose it all, she whispered. Derek kissed her temple, slow, easy, like they had all the time in the world. Good, he said. He never deserved you anyway. They walked toward security. Diana passed within 8 feet of me. Her perfume, the one I'd bought her for our anniversary 14 months ago because she'd mentioned once, briefly, that she liked it. The same one. I stood completely still until they were through the security line and out of sight. Then I found a seat near the charging stations and sat down and looked at my phone. 41 seconds of audio. Clear enough that Patricia, when I sent it to Owen, who sent it to Patricia at 9:03 a.m., texted back 14 minutes later with 2 words. That's enough. I texted Marcus that something had come up. He called immediately. I let it go to voicemail. He texted, "Everything okay?" I typed back, "We'll explain later. Fly safe. Sorry." He replied with a string of punctuation that expressed both concern and the willingness to wait. Then I drove home. Here's what I did between 10:30 a.m. and 11 p.m. on that Tuesday. I went home and made the bed, which Diana and I had left in the specific disorder of a Tuesday morning. Her side more rumpled than mine because she was a restless sleeper, and I had always found this charming. I made the bed with the same care I'd been giving everything in the past 3 weeks. The deliberate attention of someone who understands that the ordinary things are the only things he can currently control. I called Owen. He had already spoken to Sandra Beck. The emergency motions, protective orders on the house, the accounts, any financial instrument tied to either of our names were in process. The asset freeze Sandra had been preparing was filed at 11:45 a.m. Any attempted transfer above $500 from any of our joint accounts would now be flagged, held, and routed to the fraud examiner's review queue before it moved anywhere. Diana's 3 to 4 week runway had just closed. She didn't know that yet. I answered her text at 2:15 p.m. Flight delayed, home late, don't wait up, with, "Okay, drive safe," the normalcy of it. The clean domestic normalcy of a husband telling his wife to drive safe. I made dinner at 6, ate it, watched something on television I still can't name, read for an hour. The house was very quiet in the way that houses get when the person who should be in them isn't. I thought about the deck. 4 summers ago, I'd spent 3 weekends on it. Pressure-treated lumber, a design I'd drawn myself, nothing complicated, but something I wanted to get exactly right. Diana had brought me coffee on the second Saturday and sat on the steps watching, and she'd said, "You look like you're enjoying this," and I'd said, "I am," and she'd said, "I know." That's what I like about it. A small moment, the kind that accumulates. I thought about that for a while. At 11:07 p.m., headlights crossed the front window. She came in with the gray carry-on and the careful face of someone composing themselves for a performance. Soft, tired, the loving wife home from a long trip expression, assembled with the precision of someone who had been doing this for 7 months. "Hey babe," she said. "Long day." "Sit down, Diana." Something moved behind her eyes. Fast. Gone. She sat. "Is everything okay?" I set my phone on the table. Hit play. He has no idea. The color left her face in a sequence. Cheeks first, then around her mouth like a tide going out. By the time he figures it out, the accounts will already be restructured. He's about to lose it all. She opened her mouth. Nothing useful came out. Then, that's not what it— Owen filed the emergency asset protection order this morning, I said. My voice was level. I had spent 3 weeks arriving at level, and I was going to stay there. The house is flagged with the county. The accounts are frozen. All of them, including the one you've been draining into Derek Holt's LLC for the past 7 months. Any transfer attempt now goes automatically to Patricia Gaines's fraud review queue. She grabbed the edge of the table. "You recorded me. You planned to take everything from me," I said. "I planned faster." She stared at me. I watched the calculation happening. The rapid, brilliant financial mind that I had always admired running the math, checking the exits, finding them closed, one by one, the accounts, the house, the timeline she'd been counting on. "James," her voice shifted, the soft version, the one from the early years. "We can talk about this. We can figure out— Sandra Beck is my attorney," I said. "You'll want to hire someone good. I recommend not delaying. You don't have to. The LLC," I said. "You'll want to tell Derek that it's been flagged in the fraud examiner's report. Patricia Gaines was FBI financial crimes for 5 years. She's thorough." I paused. So is Owen. Diana stood up. For a moment, she just stood there, her hand still on the edge of the table, and I looked at her, really looked at her, the way I hadn't in months, maybe longer, and I felt something that surprised me. Not rage, not satisfaction, something much quieter. A deep, exhausted sadness for the specific version of us that had existed before I knew how to name what was wrong with it. "Derek said you'd never see this coming," she said. Her voice had gone flat. The performance had dissolved. "Derek," I said, "doesn't know me." I stood up and walked toward the hallway. At the door, I stopped. "He said you deserved better than me," I said. "Let's see if he still thinks that when there's nothing left to take." The room was silent. I walked down the hall and closed the bedroom door. The aftermath took 7 months, which is how long these things actually take, regardless regardless of how they play out in anyone's head. I want to be accurate about that because the recordings and the filings and the confrontation are the dramatic part, but the real part, the grinding, expensive, emotionally corrosive real part, is 7 months of legal process and financial review, and learning to exist inside a life that has been taken apart and is being put back together in a different shape. Sandra Beck was everything Owen had implied. She was not a person who wasted motion. Patricia Gaines's forensic report, Exhibits A through G, by the time it was complete, documented $47,300 moved from our joint accounts into the LLC over 7 months. The LLC had been funded with the intention, according to documents recovered in discovery, of serving as the financial foundation for what Diana's own planning folder had called a post-transition lifestyle structure. It had Derek Holt's address and Diana's operational fingerprints and a 3 to 4 week execution timeline that had been interrupted with about 72 hours to spare. Derek Holt's employer, a financial consulting firm where Diana also worked, which Sandra confirmed in the discovery phase created an additional layer of professional exposure, opened an internal investigation when the LLC registration surfaced. 2 of their clients had overlapping names with entities in the LLC documentation. That investigation was, to my knowledge, still ongoing at the time the divorce was finalized. The divorce settlement, the house stayed mine. The $47,300 in transferred funds was subject to clawback. Diana received her retirement account and a fair split of remaining joint assets. Sandra had advised me, and I agreed, that punishing her financially beyond the fraud recovery was not the goal. The goal was clean. Documented. Finished. Marcus came back from Dubai for a long weekend in February. We sat on the back deck I'd built. It was cold, but neither of us mentioned moving inside, and I told him the whole story. He was quiet through most of it, which is his way when he's listening hard. When I finished, he was quiet for a while longer. "You stood behind that column for how long?" he said. "Maybe 3 minutes. And you didn't move?" "No." He thought about that. "Good," he said. Then, "I'm sorry I wasn't there." "You were there," I said. "You just didn't know it." He looked at me. "If you hadn't been flying out that morning," I said, "I would never have been at that airport." He sat with that. "She picked the wrong Tuesday," he said finally. "She picked the wrong Tuesday." The deck was solid under us. Pressure-treated lumber, a design I'd drawn myself, built on 3 weekends 4 summers ago while Diana brought me coffee and told me she liked watching me enjoy things. That memory lived in the wood of it now, the way all memories live in the physical things you build. You can't take them out. You just learn to coexist with them. I reached over and picked up my beer. Marcus picked up his. The night was cold and clear and very quiet. Some things you build, they stay standing.